One of the main problems in photography is that it's really hard to assess whether our craft is actually any good. It's not like mathematics where 1 plus 1 is 2, and if you say 1 plus 1 is 3, then you're wrong. In photography, there is no wrong. In photography, there is no right. It's an art form, it's subjective, and that leads many photographers to disillusionment because they don't know whether their photography is any good. And in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 signs that your photography is probably better than you think. So I would say, let's get started. The first indicator that you're probably a better photographer than you think you are is that you critically assess your work. It is often said that you should be your own fiercest critic, and I think that holds true as long as you don't pursue it too hard to self-destruction. But if you take a good photo, you are probably asking yourself, why is this a good photo? Or what could I have done even better, so that you can implement that feedback for yourself in future photos. Additionally, if you have taken a photo where you see potential in, but it doesn't quite work, you ask yourself, why doesn't it work? What exactly could I have improved, or will I improve next time, so that I can actually get the photo right? So critical self-reflection will make you repeat the things that worked, and at the same time minimize or remove the aspects that went wrong in photos you've taken previously. Additionally, you should be open to peer feedback. Ask people that are ahead of you and also in the same niche of photography that you want to develop yourself in, that they give you feedback on how you can further improve your work and level up as a photographer. The reason why you should get feedback from people in your own niche is because photography doesn't equal photography. And in fact, there are so many genres of photography that it's, for instance, useless that me as a travel and event photographer give feedback to, let's say, a wildlife photographer and criticize their photos of a bird when I have absolutely no clue about wildlife photography. Additionally, you should probably also not ask family members because they will give you very encouraging feedback, but probably also not very honest feedback because they are family members, only want the good for you, and they might filter out a few more negative thoughts they have and just mention or highlight the positive things about your work. But when you critically assess your work and ask for peer feedback, then I can assure you that you are probably a better photographer than you think you are because you're willing to level up your photography game. The next indicator that you're probably a better photographer than you think you are is that you take less photos over time. When I started out in photography, I was taking photographs of everything and nothing at the same time. I was taking photos of the trash cans, of stones in the garden, of average landscapes, and I wanted to achieve quality through quantity. And yes, it was true that out of the 6,000 photos that I took, there was probably like 2 or 3 that ended up being okay. But it wasn't based on skill, but mostly based on luck that these photos worked out. In other words, as you grow as a photographer, you will gain a better understanding of what photos are worth pursuing and which photos should probably not be taken at all because there might be a better opportunity ahead. To give you a specific example, recently I went for a hike here up a hill in Vienna, and on the way I found a few average shots, but I decided not to pursue them because they probably wouldn't be worth my time because they wouldn't turn out that great anyway, and I knew that I had, first of all, limited time and better light if I would go further up the mountain where also the view would be better, and I would probably go home with a much better photo, and my assumptions in the end prevailed. And if you're now already taking less photos than you were 3 years ago, then that's probably a sign that you have become a better photographer than you think. The next hint that you're probably a better photographer than you think is that you have developed focal length preferences. Usually most of us start on a zoom lens that goes from wide to medium telephoto. And the more you use it, the more you will realize that you have certain preferences in what you shoot or at what focal lengths you shoot. You might, for instance, realize that you like to shoot on both ends of your zoom lens, so at the wide end and at the medium telephoto end. Or you might realize that you like to shoot at the middle of your focal range, like a 50mm full frame equivalent. Over time, for instance, I have developed a preference for shooting my zoom lens on a 35mm lens, so at some point I upgraded to a 35mm prime lens. But some people might upgrade to a 50mm prime lens or an 85mm prime lens. Some people will also stick to their zoom lens, but they will still have preferences of what focal length to shoot. And if you're currently shooting on a zoom lens, but you haven't really figured out what your favorite focal length is, then I invite you to go to your Lightroom catalog or to your editor of choice, and you go into the library and you filter for all the photos that you've taken on your zoom lens, and then you filter for focal lengths that you have used. And usually you will see that there is a few focal lengths that you have probably used more than others, which gives you an indication what your favorite focal length might be. So if you have one or more favorite focal lengths, I would argue that this is a sign that you're a better photographer than you think you are. And the next clue that you're probably a better photographer than you think is that you put less emphasis on gear. Many photographers I've talked to, including myself, have a phase at some point in our photographic career where we have a massive emphasis on gear, because especially at beginners, we tend to believe that the better gear, the better lens, the better camera will give us the photos that we absolutely want to take. So we're going to start on a kit lens, then we're going to amass a multitude of prime lenses, then we're going to amass a super telephoto lens, an ultra wide angle lens, and at some point we're going to have all the focal ranges. And since all these focal lengths did not actually improve our photography, it has to be the camera that is to blame, so we're going to switch our camera and it's going to make our photos better. But most people will break out of that circle eventually when they realize that the better photo gear will not actually improve their photos. I had to learn this the hard way when I upgraded from my €500 camera to a €3,000 camera, and it absolutely did not improve my photos. Why? Well, because I didn't actually invest in the right thing, which was in education on how to compose my scene correctly, how to edit my photos correctly, and how to read the light in order to actually take a really good photo. Today, for instance, I shoot on Fuji APS-C, and I have to say that I still have not reached a point where I would say that the gear is really the limit to my photography. Right now, for instance, I still try to create more meaningful compositions. I'm still unhappy with the way I edit, and I want to get better at it. Additionally, I also try to level up my color grading skills for video, and I can tell you that even after all these years of doing this, I have not reached the limit of my gear, where the gear is the real barrier to my progress. And most photographers will eventually breach this gear obsession phase, and they will move to what's actually going to improve their photos, which is to invest in education and new skills. And if you're still in this gear obsession era, don't worry about it, we've all been there. And I'm actually planning a video in which I talk about gear acquisition syndrome and how to overcome it. And if you do not want to miss that video, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. And now let's get to the fifth reason why you're probably a better photographer than you think you are, which is that you know your camera by heart. And knowing your camera by heart has two dimensions. The first one is that you know the exposure triangle by heart, or at least it becomes second nature. You don't have to think about settings anymore because you know what settings you have to use in order to get the photo you want. And the second dimension is that you have assigned all your custom buttons to functions that suit your photography and make your photography more efficient. But it's not only about assigning all these buttons, but it's also being able to use these buttons in a split second when conditions change. Let's for instance say that you have a shot in front of you and your intuition tells you that if you want to get this shot, you should probably introduce motion blur and do a longer exposure. Accordingly, in order to achieve that long exposure with motion blur, you flick the right button within a split second to get the desired effect. And of course, you do not need to know every single setting on your camera, you just need to know the settings that actually matter for the type of photography that you do. And the better you know your camera, the more it becomes an extension of your own vision, and the more you can actually focus on the scene in front of you, giving you better photos. And I think being able to use your camera by heart is just a great sign of maturity, and it demonstrates that you're a better photographer than you probably think. And at the beginning of the video, I told you that I have a focal length preference. And if you want to know my two preferences and favorite lenses right now, then I invite you to check out this video up here in which I tell you what these lenses are. Is there any signs of progress that I might have missed? Let me know in the comment section. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully see you in next week's video. Bye.